the point of the appointments clause, which requires the advice and consent of the Senate for important positions in the federal government, isn't just because of separation of powers, isn't just because of checks and balances. All that is designed for one thing. This is a design that our founding fathers put into the Constitution and pulled from the Declaration of Independence. It's all over our founding documents and the Federalist Papers. It's designed for one thing: the preservation of liberty.
Over 1 million Americans face sentencing every year, and it will be the most important day of their lives. But we don't fully understand the system, how broken it is, and what we can do to make it better. I'm Doug Passon. I'm a 25-year criminal defense lawyer and a sentencing expert. My goal is to bring more awareness, more fairness, and more humanity to the sentencing process. So, are you ready? Then let's get set for sentencing. I got all gussied up for you. I put on a nice shirt.
Oh, well, thank you.
I shaved a little bit. It's only 2:13 my time, and I'm still optimistic
Sober.
that I'm still sober, and I'm also, what I was going to say was that I'm still optimistic that I'm going to make it to the gym this afternoon. And so no tequila for this talk, even though
Okay.
this is yet another subject where drowning our sorrows in tequila would be actually fully appropriate. But anyway, hey
Okay.
everybody. Doug Passon coming to you from Studio 3553. It's an almost rainy afternoon. We're just waiting for the storms to come again. I'm sitting here in my office with my good friend and colleague, Mark Allenbaugh of sentencingstats.com fame. Good afternoon, sir. How are you?
I'm doing quite well, Doug. How are
Good,
you?
good, good. I don't even say returning champion anymore because you're just a
Yeah.
fixture now. You're furniture in the
Yeah.
landscape, the set for sentencing landscape, the lounge. So why are
Very
we
good.
here today?
Wow.
We're here today to talk about a very timely and very important topic. And it's a
Yes.
hot topic in some spots, and it's completely kind of going under the radar in other spots. And so we really felt that it was important to get this out here and talk about it because it's a big one. And I'm not sure
Yeah.
people understand just how big it is. But here's the setup. Ready? Hopefully you agree, we're in the midst of yet another constitutional crisis. Everyone's saying,
Yes.
when will we know when a constitutional crisis? It's here. Okay,
Yep.
there's plenty of things you could point to, but this one is just unmitigated, beyond dispute, and it rests. This is something that of a creature of the president's own making, and it has
Yes.
to do with the United States attorneys in every district of our country because
Yep.
many of them are there unlawfully. They are not
Correct.
there legitimately. And there has been motions filed by diligent defense lawyers to have them, and by default, their whole office that they rule over in any given jurisdiction, to have them disqualified.
Correct.
And judges are granting those motions, and that litigation is moving its way up the court to the Court of Appeals, and almost certainly is going to end up in front of the Supreme Court.
Hmm.
And this is not an isolated issue. The first one was District of New Jersey, right? That
Right.
that was in. I found that out as I got off a plane in Newark Airport to go to a hearing in New
Yes.
Jersey.
Right. Right. I remember that. Yep.
Flew
Yep.
across country, got an email from the court, and this was
Yeah.
back in August, I think, and got an
July.
email July, and got an email
Yeah.
from the court saying this hearing is vacated, and we're like, what? And that was the first indication that something was really going haywire in the court,
Yeah.
and so this was started in District New Jersey, but it's happening in California in the Central District. It's happening in Nevada, District of Nevada,
Mhm.
District of New Mexico.
Correct.
East Eastern District of Virginia, which is probably the
Yep.
most recent because that's the Comey prosecution and now the James prosecution,
Yep.
and Northern
Tisha
District,
James.
yeah,
Yep.
Tish James, and Northern District of New York, you said, right?
Yes.
So I don't
But
know
no
if there's,
litigation. Oddly, there's no litigation going on there just yet, and that's really
yeah,
surprises me.
and I reached out. I think I copied you on an email, but I reached
Yep.
out to the federal defender. I haven't heard back. I don't know why there's
Yeah.
no. I don't know what's
Yeah.
going on there, but we have to
That's
figure
very
that out.
strange. Yeah.
But give us a rundown of what was the, shot, the first shot across the bow, who fired it, and what was the result?
So yeah, this it was really interesting. So this was a small case out of the District of New Jersey, United States versus Gerard. I think it was him and his son, I believe. And to be honest with you, I can't remember exactly what the details of the case itself were about. It was a federal criminal case. And Gerard's attorney, I think the dad, on his own, and this just came out of nowhere, filed a motion to dismiss the indictment and to disqualify Elena Haba, who was the purported acting U.S. attorney for the District of New Jersey at that time. And it was a really, now in retrospect, it was like, duh, but nobody had done it yet. And it blew up. And literally once this motion was filed, it put that entire court, I mean, the entire District of New Jersey, brought it to a screeching standstill over one weekend.
Hmm.
And because it was really the motion was distributed apparently by the chief judge to all the judges with a little note saying you guys might want to hold on because this this is a really interesting, perhaps has some merit. And basically the argument was that Haba, so back in, I was going to back up for a second. So whenever a new administration comes into power, like Trump did back in January, it's customary for all the U.S. attorneys to resign and to allow the new administration to appoint his or her, the new administration's chosen U.S. attorneys to that position. But that takes some time. Whatever president comes into power on January 20th doesn't already have a whole raft or a whole list of ready to go U.S. attorneys in place. Why? Because while the president can nominate a U.S. attorney, he must get the advice and consent of the Senate. And that's written directly into the Constitution. It's actually, I think it's part two, clause two of the U.S. Constitution, where
Yeah.
it sets forth that the president can only appoint certain officers of the United States with the advice and consent of the Senate. And so what you usually have, and this goes with federal judges too. All
Yeah.
federal judges have to go through this process to include Supreme Court justices, as all U.S. attorneys, and all members of the cabinet, basically all department heads in the executive branch, such as the Treasury Secretary, Secretary of Defense, Secretary of War, whatever it's called now, stuff like
Right.
that. So I keep saying it takes time to do that because
Yeah. And
once the
well,
president nominates it, it has to go to the Senate and they have hearings and all this other stuff.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And then tell us about Haba because well, first of all, backstory. She's one of Trump's former lawyers
Yes,
and represented him in one of his, I think it was the civil fraud case or maybe the E. Jean Carroll case. I don't know, but she is a loyalist to the
right.
bone, and it's very important for Trump to have people that are blindly loyal to them in these
Yes,
positions so that he can control everything that's happening. He can
right,
make sure that he or none of his people in his circle are exposed to any criminal prosecutions, and he can
right.
make sure that his enemies are exposed
Yeah,
to
well, we can
whatever
talk about that.
whatever
Yes,
prosecutions he thinks might be appropriate, whether they're supported by the
right.
law or not.
He
And if
wants
he
yes men.
he
Yeah,
want or women,
I mean,
and
yes,
and Alina Habba is the very definition of that.
yes.
And so he said, that's my person, and she's in there. So he sends her to the Senate for confirmation, and what happens?
Well, he nominates her, but the Senate. does it. So the first thing he does, just to back just 1 second. So once a president comes into power, he can put people in the U.S. Attorney's office without the advice and consent of the Senate, but just on an interim basis. And this is allowed by statute because again, it takes time to get somebody up and running and
Yeah.
confirmed by the Senate. So
So he
he
does that with her. And that
well,
what's the
he actually
time
did it with
frame?
somebody else. He did it. He started with somebody else, and this guy wasn't being the yes man he thought he was, and so he cans him and sends him off to somewhere in Africa as an ambassador. I think this was like back in March, and then he brings Elena Haba in. She's
Okay.
my gal, but again on an interim basis. At the same time, he sends her nomination over to the Senate. The Senate says no way in hell. I mean, we're not even going to bother having hearings. No way in hell are we going to
Well, there's also
confirm her.
this sort of arcane rule that the Senate still adheres to, and it's almost a more of a it's more of a norm than an actual law
Right.
or rule, right? Which is the
Loosely.
sitting senators in the district, if they're both opposed,
Right.
then it can't, then that's a major
Well,
impediment,
that
right?
that just kills it. So
That
if the
kills it.
senator, yeah, if the
Yeah.
senators from the state where the district is in say no to the person, it doesn't matter if the rest of the Senate says yes.
So you're
That
saying Cory Booker wasn't all on board with Alina Habba's?
nope.
Oh, okay. And,
Yeah,
wow, stunner.
yeah,
Okay.
I know, shocker.
All right. What's the
So
time limit on this interim appointment? The clock's so they're saying no, the clock's ticking on her. What is the clock?
yeah, so the clock is 120 days.
Okay.
And the actually so and there was a little bit of debate about did the clock that 120-day clock start when she became interim, or did that 120-day clock start when Trump came into office? And it looks like when he actually, to be honest with you, I'm not sure how the court ultimately calculated it, but it was before the clock started running before even Elena Hobbit was appointed. I just don't remember the exact date.
So either way,
When
it's time's up for Habba.
so yeah, so time runs out now at the end on July 1. July, although she thought her time ran out on July 22nd, but the courts, and we'll get to that subsequently, thought it ran out on July 1. So what happens though when somebody is when the clock runs out? Well, usually at that point, either they've been confirmed or will shortly be confirmed by the Senate, or they're out. I mean, they're just out. You're no longer U.S. attorney. You're out of power, etc. And either the the courts of that district by statute can appoint their own person, or the and that person actually becomes the U.S. attorney, or the first assistant U.S. attorney can become basically an acting U.S. attorney just to fill that vacancy. So what actually happened was the court stepped in as part of its statutory authority to do so, and it decided to appoint somebody, but it wasn't Haba. What the district court judges, District of New Jersey, all decided that the first assistant, Grace something, I can't remember her name off the top of my head, but she became the U.S. attorney for the District of New Jersey by operation of the vote of the judges, and that's all there in the statute.
Desiree Lee Grace.
Yes, thank you. Yeah,
Desiree.
Desiree Grace,
Okay.
and she's, by the way, just one thing, just to be clear on Elena Haba, zero federal criminal experience. As a matter of fact, I
Yeah.
think the only criminal trial she'd ever participated in was Trump's state criminal trial in New York.
Yeah, the
She's
fraud,
never, yeah, the
which
fraud where he was convicted
yeah,
34 felonies.
right.
Yeah,
He
she
went down in flames. And she
he
was
went
the one
down
that
in
would
flames.
come out and scream at the press after
Yes,
every day.
yes,
Well,
yeah,
and
but
this is the problem. It's
right.
not about I guess she's the ultimate DEI hire then because she's completely
Oh yeah,
unqualified.
literally a DEI
Yeah.
hire, literally a
And
DEI hire. Yeah,
she's absolutely unqualified for the job.
yeah,
She's there. Her special equity or inclusion is that she's a toady.
right.
She'll do whatever the president wants. And guess what, Alina? I'm sorry. they're just not that into you. Nobody thinks you deserve to be sitting in that seat. The Senate doesn't think you deserve to be sitting in that
Yeah.
seat.
The
The
judges don't.
federal
Yeah.
bench in the
Yeah.
District of New Jersey doesn't think you
Yeah.
deserve to be sitting on the seat. And my guess is most of the people in our office think that too, but they ain't gonna say
Correct.
it.
Correct. Correct.
But
So
anyway,
so it so anyway, so what happens is the same day the judges appoint Grace, Trump fires her and through Pam Bondi, directs Pam Bondi to fire Grace. And what they then did is they appointed Elena Haba as a special U.S. attorney, not the assistant or
first the
not the
first
acting
assistant
or whatever.
or
Yeah,
acting. Oh,
but they it was a weird thing. It was a special United States attorney and the first assistant U.S. attorney, both. They
oh,
appointed her to both positions,
okay.
and now, as you may recall, as I said a few minutes ago, generally when there's a vacancy in the U.S. attorney's office in that seat, the
Yeah, the
first
first.
assistant can automatically become. So that's what they're
Yeah,
thought. Oh, we'll just make her the first assistant, and now the seat is vacated. That
yeah.
position is vacated. How is it vacated? Well, she just resigned. Elena Hobbit just resigned. Well, we fired Grace. Excuse me. We fired Grace, so that's now vacant. And now Elena Hobbit is the first assistant for 2 seconds, and now
Yeah.
she's going to become the U.S. attorney by operation
As
of this Federal Vacancy Act.
to borrow a phrase that my good friend Mark Allenbaugh likes to use, that seems like too cute by half.
Yes,
This
just two
little
two
like
two keep by half.
shift the chairs around, and we've
Yeah,
somehow then all of a sudden somehow the constitutional appointments clause is irrelevant, or
correct.
the statute that the legislative branch passed giving the judges the authority to pick the successor is irrelevant.
Right.
And
It's a
that is
workaround. Yeah,
it's a workaround. And that
yeah,
workaround is now the real basis for all this litigation because they're doing that in other jurisdictions too.
right.
And this is why the lawyers say she's not there legally. This is an illegal workaround.
Well, it's not
She,
just the lawyers now. It's not just the lawyers. So what I was saying about in that Gerard case,
yeah,
Gerard's attorney filed a motion to
yeah,
dismiss his indictment and to disqualify
yeah,
Elena Haba because of this too cute by halfway she became or continued to hold that office
right,
of the U.S. attorney. And the judge actually was Chief Judge Brand, Middle District of Pennsylvania, because the issue was moved over to him because all the district court judges were thought to potentially have a conflict. So
right,
so anyway, I won't go into all the machinations
yeah.
behind all that. So anyway, a
But he
judge
agrees. So yeah, it's
a
not just
judge agreed and said,
yeah,
well, agreed on one thing and disagreed on another. He agreed that Elena Haba was not validly holding that office. What he disagreed on was whether the indictment could be dismissed. And what the theory was there is if Elena Haba is not the legitimate U.S. attorney and she's doing, she's signing indictments and doing all this work, then everything that she's doing is what's called in the law ultra vires, which means that she's doing it without authority. So therefore, it's void ab initio, void from the beginning. So she's been acting without authority. So the theory was since she signed, her signature was on, it's in all the signature blocks as the U.S. attorney or acting U.S. attorney or special U.S. attorney or whatever, that delegitimized whatever that document is, including an indictment. And what Chief Judge Brand said, and I think he's right on this, is you do not need to have an authorized U.S. attorney sign an indictment for it to be valid, as long as it's signed by the grand jury or somebody like that, whoever the head of the grand jury was, the chief juror. That's legitimate enough, and he's right on that. I'm pretty sure. So he said, look, you're not going to get the indictment dismissed in that regard. There are other ways to dismiss the indictment. We'll talk
yeah,
about that a little bit later,
yeah,
but just at least on that ground,
yeah.
no. But he did agree she's illegitimate. And then what happened? That's when everything came. Well, before everything came crashing to a halt before then, but a lot of the cases are now still stayed in
Yeah.
the District of New Jersey and
Yeah.
elsewhere where this issue
Yeah.
not only has been raised but determined. Recently in the District of Nevada, federal judge out there for the same reason disqualified the U.S. attorney
Yeah.
there participating in any prosecutions, as well as not just the U.S. attorney, but all the attorneys that he or she supervises. Those are disqualified
Yeah.
too. And
And
that's all you're assisting. So that's a
that's a
big deal.
big deal
Yeah.
because I think the part of the objection or the counter argument from the government is, well, I know the head of the office may be there, you might say is there unlawfully, but these line prosecutors are duly, they're lawyers and they're federal prosecutors. So the argument is if there's if the fish rots at the head, essentially.
Right.
So,
Exactly. They operate under her supervision and through her authority.
mhm,
So if she's rotten,
yeah.
fruit of the poisonous tree, to borrow a
All
phrase from
right.
another area of law.
So these cases, this is really grinding the criminal system to a halt. And
Yes.
the question is, I think I know the answer, but couldn't the administration just fix this problem by pulling Alina out of there, pulling anyone that's not there lawfully, and just putting a new person up in there for confirmation that would clear the Senate and just move on with this?
Yes.
Okay, but
It's
that's
that
not
simple to
happening.
fix.
Yeah.
Nope.
Okay. And we know
Yeah.
why that's not happening because having control over the federal prosecution in this country is a major priority of this
Yeah.
administration for reasons we've already stated. Now, our next question is there are some people who, they may be in custody and they don't want to sit around in pretrial detention for months on end waiting for this issue to work its way up through the Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court, and they just said, screw it, I'll waive the issue, get me sentenced and get me out of here. Talk to me about waiver. Can you waive this issue?
No, you
Uh,
cannot waive
uh-oh.
this issue. And this is a big O because a lot of cases, well, there's a lot that are stayed. A lot of cases are still moving forward on the presumption that not only that you can waive this, but defendants are in fact at least trying to waive it. Now, here's the good news for you defendants out there that may have waived this.
Yeah.
You didn't
Yeah,
because you
because you
can't.
can't.
Yeah.
So,
Why? Why can't you waive this? Because this is such a fundamental, it's what's called a structural defect. A structural defect goes to not just, so I like to use the analogy to like football. Football, we have rules when you're playing football, how many yards you have to progress to get a first down, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so sometimes those rules are subject to interpretation. That's why we have the refs and all this other stuff.
yeah.
If you violate a rule, you foul out. That's not a structural defect. A structural defect is all of a sudden somebody decided to change the length of the football field or increase the height of the goalposts or narrow them or something like that. Or said, we're going to have 15 guys on our team and you're stuck with your 11. That would be a structural defect. You're completely changing the rules of the game, not applying the rules. And that's what's happening here. Because one of the rules of the game is you have to have a qualified attorney on the other side. And
Yeah.
if that attorney is not qualified, in other words, if that purported government attorney is not a government attorney because that person did not get confirmed by the Senate, which is what happened here, and
Yeah.
that attorney is disqualified, then the rule that's a structural defect. It would be the same thing as if and this is really weird. This is a kind of a new area because we've never encountered this issue before. So I have to use like a lot of analogies. It would be in some cases you might have a conflict with your client,
Yeah.
and that sometimes you can waive that particular conflict. But there are some types of conflicts that are so core to the fairness of the process
Yeah.
that those conflicts are considered
Yeah.
unwaivable.
Well,
So
and
where the
let me quote some language that you pointed out to me from the Supreme Court case, which is it goes to the heart of why this is so important. A lot of people will think of this in the surface, especially non-lawyers, and they'll say, "Sounds like a technicality to me. Sounds like defense lawyer, you found a loophole." No, like I said, constitutional crisis, and so here's some language here. It says, and this is from Circo ex rel. It's a Third Circuit, but
Third Circuit,
it's
yeah,
quoting Bond versus United States Supreme
great
Court
case,
case
yes,
from 2011, and it says the appointments clause is aimed at more than an abstract division of labor between
right,
branches of government. The structural principles secured by the separation of powers, protect the individual as well. So fundamentally, people need to understand this is a violation of separation of powers. Advise and consent is meant to be a check in a system of checks
Yes.
and balances, a check on the president's power to put whoever he wants into these positions of very important power.
Well, he can't put whoever he wants. That's exactly the
That's
point.
that's the point. That because of
Right.
this, that because this is there, and he
Right.
doesn't want this there because he wants to do
Correct.
whatever he wants. And
Yeah.
the language gets better because they're citing this all goes all the way back to the founders, all the way
Yes.
back to the Federalist Papers. And so here's some more language. Quote, the importance of the Appointments Clause has been recognized since our nation's founding. In the colonial system, appointments were distributed in, quote, support of a despicable and dangerous system of personal influence. Can we just linger on those words? A despicable and dangerous system of personal influence. And if you question what that language could mean in a modern context, go to the Eastern District of Virginia,
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
line prosecutors adhering to the Constitution, adhering to their ethical duties, who investigated a case to see if they could bring it against someone like Comey or someone like Tish James. And they
Yeah.
said, there's no case there.
Right.
And then the president sends out a truth to Pam Bondi, a truth, whatever you call those, truth social bullshit, and
Yeah.
says, these people are evil and they were mean to me. They prosecuted me on nothing. Our credibility is at stake. They need to be indicted and they need to be indicted now. And that was a tweet, whatever he sent out. And 2 days later, he gets some goofball insurance lawyer again with zero experience as a prosecutor to waltz into the grand jury and bring charges against
Yeah.
Comey. And then it
Yeah.
just happened again with
Yeah.
Tish James, and there's more
There's
coming.
more. Yeah. There's more.
And
There's
I can
more.
keep going. This is Alexander Hamilton in the Federalist Papers that enabled. Okay, so it's a dangerous system of personal influence that enables officers to quote harass our people and eat out their substance.
That's in the Declaration of Independence. Those
And
words you just read.
oh, that's in the thank you. That's in the
Mhm.
Declaration. And eat out their substance, and that that language resonates with me because I don't think Trump cares if there's a conviction, they ever get convicted or punished or go to jail. I think he'd like it, but he
Mhm.
knows that the very fact of if you bring a charge, it will harass and
Mhm.
it will eat out their substance. It will drain their resources. It will cause them massive amounts of stress and anxiety. It could tarnish their public image. Once you're indicted, it's even if you never get convicted, it's a
Right.
stain that
Right.
sticks with you. He doesn't care. Do you remember back when he got impeached for the first time? He was mad. He knew Biden was going to be his main political rival. And what did he
Mhm.
do? He said, I just want you to say there's an investigation. That's what
Right.
he was
Yeah.
motivated to do. Why?
Yeah.
He doesn't care if the investigation ever comes to fruition. He just
Yeah.
wanted that to brand them with that taint and that dirt
Yeah.
because it does eat out your substance. And so,
Well, it
indeed,
does. Yeah.
yeah,
Go ahead.
I
Sorry.
can keep going because I love all these quotes from that you've pulled.
Well,
But go ahead.
what I was gonna say, just to take all just to really wrap all this into like a little clear crystal bow, if that makes
Yeah,
any sense. But the point of the appointments clause, which requires the advice and consent of the Senate for important positions in the federal government, isn't just because of separation of powers, isn't just because of checks and balances. All that is designed for one thing. This is a design that our founding fathers put into the Constitution and pulled from the Declaration of Independence. It's all over our founding documents and the Federalist Papers. It's designed for one thing: the preservation of liberty. That's what this all has to do with. And what are prosecutors designed? What are our criminal laws designed to do? Well, to take liberty away
yeah,
when due process has been followed. We
Yeah.
have this whole due process procedure where, yeah, you can lose your liberty if you commit a crime, if you admit to it or you're found guilty. But there's all sorts of rules and procedures that the government must follow before your liberty can be taken away. But the biggest one right there is who can prosecute you?
Yeah.
That's what this comes down to. And it just can't be any schmuck that the president wants. That's the point. And that's what the problem was in England with the king. He put schmucks in the yes men, yes, well,
Yeah.
probably not yes women back then, but he had this was how tyrants operate is they put corrupt people into places of power that
Yes.
enable the tyrant's own corruption to last and become more powerful. And so what we're dealing with right here is at the very cusp of tyranny. To
Yeah.
me, I don't mean to sound hyperbolic,
Yeah.
but this is the kind of like the last bulwark
Right.
before the whole shithouse goes up in flames. This is it.
Yeah.
Because if this breaks, and then then he's running all the prosecutors and they will do what he says at any time, regardless of it's if they're following the law or not. And we are already seeing that the bulwark has cracked, and that's what's going on now with Comey.
Mhm.
Bringing federal charges, but there's no factual basis or no justification for it, or just out of vindictiveness. And the same thing with Tish James, and it's
Yeah.
going to keep happening and happening. And so that's why this needs to be fought. And
Yeah.
that's why it's not waivable. You
Right.
cannot waive your right to a fair trial or you cannot waive your right to all due process and just say, fuck it, do what you
Yeah.
want with me. No, because it's not just about you,
Yeah.
defendant. It's about all of us. It's the whole
Yeah.
structure.
Yeah. And
It's not
so
waivable.
now it's time to for all the judges who are listening to this to please listen carefully. You're our last hope, Obi-Wan.
Yes.
The system is coming apart at the seams, but you're still there, and you have the power to send a very clear message that the Constitution matters, that the legislative branch matters because they're the ones that pass the law, giving you, judges, the power to appoint U.S. attorneys in this situation, and you matter. Your authority matters, which is all of those things have been completely ignored by this president and his
Right.
administration. And so, because it is such a fundamental breach of the Constitution and the law and structural, lawyers are going to start filing motions to dismiss these cases on those grounds. And it
Yep.
is our great hope that you answer the call and grant those motions because that is the only thing that has the hope of righting this particular wrong. And there's a lot of other wrongs that need to be righted, but this one, there's only one way to fix this, and that is by sending a very clear message that if you're going to play these games with the law and the Constitution, we're going to start dismissing cases wholesale, and you can live
Correct.
with those consequences.
Correct. Correct. That
Okay.
is the only remedy. And so I like to use the analogy to the Fourth Amendment. We're all familiar, from TV and all this stuff, with the exclusionary rule, which says if you breach somebody's Fourth Amendment, then you can't Fourth Amendment rights, then you can't use that evidence that you've obtained as a
Hmm.
result of that
Yeah.
breach. Well, what's the point of that? Well, the point of that is to make it harder for the government to prosecute in cases like that.
Right.
It's to act as a prophylactic, where
Yeah.
the government will say, "Shit, we better honor the Fourth Amendment because we're not going to be able to use that particular
There
evidence."
has to
So
be a consequence for
there
violating
has
the
to be
Constitution.
there has to be a
Otherwise,
consequence,
what
right?
stops them from doing it? Nothing.
Exactly,
Right.
exactly. So that's the whole point of the exclusionary rule. It's not
Yeah.
necessarily, well, it's fair, but the point is it's not bred out of fairness. The point of the exclusionary rule is to get the government to stop. It's
Right.
a check on the government
Exactly.
by the judges. It was
Yes.
judicially made. Here is another, I hate to say opportunity because it's not really an opportunity, it's a requirement that
Yeah.
judges now must recognize that they have to put a stop to this. And the only way they can do it is start dismissing
Yeah.
cases,
Yeah. Yeah.
start dismissing, and lawyers cannot waive this.
Right.
Stop waiving it. It's not waivable.
Right. And it's particularly egregious because it is such an easy fix on the part of the president.
Exactly.
And there,
Yes.
every day that Alina Habba and her ilk continue to occupy those offices is a day that the president thumbs their nose at the courts and the Constitution. So what are you going
Right.
to do about it? And you
Right.
know that the suppression is a perfect example because, it means the evidence goes out even if it means the case goes out the window with it. And in those cases, people have had their cases
Yeah.
dismissed, and
Yes.
sometimes they've committed very serious crimes. But we
Yes.
recognize that when those in power break the law, that is more egregious than when a citizen or an individual is alleged to have broken the law.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, so what else do we need people to know?
Well, so right now the issue is on appeal in two circuit courts. The Elena Haba issue is on appeal right now in the Third Circuit. It's on expedited appeal. The briefs, I think the opening brief, the government's opening brief, and then the defendant's reply brief have already been filed, or brief in opposition, and then the government's reply brief is due very soon. I think oral argument is set sometime for middle of November, if I recall, or maybe early November. So it's a few weeks from now. But my expectation is that the Third Circuit is going to rule pretty quickly, and we'll probably have a decision certainly before the end of the year, probably sometime in early December. Two state dinners they're going to affirm. I just don't
Oh,
see how they can't. I
yeah,
see this is an easy affirmance.
yeah,
It's also on appeal right now in the Ninth Circuit too. It arose out of the District of Nevada.
Nevada, yeah,
That that U.S. attorney has been disqualified for the same reason as Haba has. I
mhm,
don't know the status of the Ninth Circuit case. I don't recall the briefing
yeah,
schedule, but the point simply is, even if both of them affirm the Ninth and the Third, which they very well could, and I expect them to, frankly, this ultimately is going to go to the Supreme Court because Trump is going to appeal this all the way to the Supreme Court. Which, just to back up for 1 second, I'm a little surprised, given all the backlogs and cases this has been causing, that
yeah,
Trump hasn't tried to skip the appellate courts and go
and gone
straight
straight.
to which he could. I mean,
Yeah,
that's called certiorari before opinion or
yeah,
decision or something like that, because this is so important that the Supreme Court really needs to step in and
interesting. Well,
resolve
maybe
this.
maybe they don't like their odds. I don't know. I mean,
But that's what I'm kind of thinking, is they don't like their odds. I cannot see I can't see Gorsuch or Barrett, buying into this, and that's all you need is the three liberal justices and
mm,
those two. I can't see
yeah,
either of them
yeah,
buying into this bullshit. So
yeah,
that's it. And then the third and the ninth will be affirmed. James Comey has said that he is going to be litigating this issue too in his
yeah.
case. I'm sure
That's the
Tish James is.
fourth. Is that the
That's the
fourth?
Fourth Circuit. Yeah.
Okay, so that's going to be up there sooner
Yeah.
rather than later too.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that is the kind of the most common scenario of how a case ends up in the Supremes, is if
Yeah.
the issue is in each circuit. Although if
Yeah.
every circuit rules one way, sometimes the Supreme Court will say there's no need to take this case
Correct. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
pretty obvious on its face. That's why all these circuits are ruling this way.
Right. Right.
So yeah, it's going to be interesting to
But
see.
I see it at the Supreme Court probably by no later than March. I see it up there.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right. Well, shoot. I'm glad we talked about this.
Yeah.
And I hope it's on everyone's
It
radar. And
has to
I
be on
do think it's
everybody's
so
radar. It
the
really has
fact,
to be.
the fact that all these cases have ground to a halt and the system, in a normal, this is why nothing is normal but in a normal situation, a functioning government would say our responsibility is to move these cases quickly through the system for due process for the defendants and for any victims in the case, and that this is very detrimental to justice on every level. So we should just capitulate and get somebody in there that's acceptable to be confirmed by the Senate. but they're not doing it.
Right.
They are
Right.
not doing it, and which shows you they don't care about justice in any meaningful sense of the word. They care about power. That's the
Yeah.
takeaway from that. That's the only conclusion I can come to from this.
Well, it's not just the destruction of the administrative state that Steve Bannon always spoke about. It's the destruction of the state.
Yeah.
That's what's going on.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. And you know what? If the courts are disabled, then they can commit their crimes unfettered. Look, they could do that anyway, which is if they have the people in charge that are never going to prosecute them. But it's bad. This is like if the canary in the coal mine. I mean, that canary
You
is
know,
dead,
Doug, that
dead
is
as
such a
dead can
fucking
be.
good point. That is such a fucking good point. It's not just who they are prosecuting, it's who they are not going to prosecute. And
Hmm.
when you have your toady as the U.S. attorney, you know who she's going to prosecute and who she's not going to prosecute. She's going to prosecute James Comey, and she's not going to prosecute all
Look
the
at Tom
abuses by
Homan.
ICE or Tallman.
Homan with his
Yes,
big
fifty
bag of
thousand dollar
cash.
bag of cash. Yeah, that just went away.
Yes. I'm
Yeah.
actually on my way to Albertsons right now because someone's delivering me a bag full of cash. And we're
On
gonna meet
camera,
on
on camera
camera. We're
too.
gonna meet out back behind the dumpster. But I
Oh
assure you,
man.
Mark, I assure you,
Yeah.
there's nothing shady going on there. It's just
Yeah. Just
this is
big.
just the way I do business, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just the way
Okay.
I do business.
Yeah.
And, no problem. And I love that. Did you watch the Senate confirmation hearing? Because they were asking Pam Bondi, like, where's that money?
Yeah.
She goes,
I
you'll
didn't
have to
watch. Yeah.
ask.
Yeah.
She goes, you'll
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
to ask Cash
Oh,
Patel.
that's
You'll
right.
have to ask the
That's right.
FBI. Like, hey, did he keep the money? You'll have to ask him. Do you know if he declared that money on his income tax? You'll have
Yeah.
to ask him. I mean, come on. And the thing
Yeah.
is, if it were an indigent client, someone who I would have represented as a federal public defender, or even some of our clients who have some resources, they would be buried under the jail for a crime like that.
Yeah.
But if you're
Right.
part of this essentially criminal organization that's running our country now, there's
Right.
no such thing as being prosecuted for a crime. Do you think that if going back to Hunter Biden, who gets
Oh,
prosecuted under Joe Biden's administration, do you think in a million years that if Don or Eric were doing something untoward, I know
they
they
already
never,
are. You
I
know they are.
know, oh, come on, really? Yeah, we do know
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
already.
Yeah.
But do you think in a hot minute, if there was a prosecutor who said we gotta do something about this,
Or
they'd
they
ever
just
be
lost their job.
prosecuted? They'd be
Yeah.
prosecuted in a million years? No, they're out the fucking door quicker than you
Right.
can say diddly.
Right.
So that's how this is. And when there is no law,
And if a
there is
state
only tyranny.
prosecutor, right, and if a state prosecutor tried to do something,
They'd be
that
indicted.
prosecutor will get prosecuted,
Yeah,
or
they'll
a
be indicted.
judge. If a state, yes, they'll get indicted. Yeah, just like what's happened to a state judge. You know, that's still going on. That judge out of
Well,
Michigan that tried to have
oh,
somebody.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. We did a podcast with Judge
Yes.
Gertner about that.
Yeah.
Hannah, I can't remember her. Oh, I
Yeah.
wonder what's happened with that. We haven't heard. But guess what? Like maybe that's the next step. Like, I really don't like these federal judges. They're not very nice. So I'm just gonna move in my own judges in there.
Right.
I
Yes.
know they haven't been confirmed by the Senate, and I
Doesn't
know,
matter.
but
Yeah.
like, move over, Judge, because this guy's
Right.
taking your office.
Right. Exactly.
Is there I mean, it seems to me that's a very thin line between what's happening with these AUSAs and the judges. I mean, the only
Yes.
difference is one is a judicial branch appointment and one is an executive, but they
Do you
both
think
require
Trump
advice.
cares? Do you
They both
think
re
Trump even
they
knows the
both
difference?
require advice and consent.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And if I'm arguing the appeal in this case, I say, where do you draw the line? If you sanction this behavior, what's next?
Right.
That's the question. Because there's always going to be this is about pushing, pushing, pushing until there's no more, the line is completely obliterated.
There is no bottom.
Yeah.
There is no bottom. Yeah.
So please, judges, pay
Yeah.
attention, do something. All right. Well, hey, it's 3 o'clock, almost tequila time, but damn, I still have to go to the gym.
Yeah.
Do you know what's more dangerous than tequila?
Not working out.
Costco.
Costco.
They just, well, and by the way, Costco is like 2 minutes from my gym, and they just have it. They got a new thing at their little cafe.
Yeah.
It's a brownie sundae with salted caramel on top,
Damn.
and that's
Damn.
all I can think of for like. It just came out a week ago, and every day I think, man, I would really like to eat one of those, and it's 820 calories,
A bite.
but it looks so
Uh,
good. It's
yeah.
part of me wants to go to the gym and then go get that brownie sundae. But I'm probably not going to do that. I'll probably just go home and have a nice meal with my family and then drink a lot of tequila. Because
There you go.
there's a lot less calories in tequila than in that brownie sundae.
I believe it. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah. That
it's
better for
all
your A1C, I guess.
exactly very low glycemic index tequila. And by the way, I just booked a trip to Mexico to visit several distilleries. I'm super excited.
Yeah. You should do a documentary.
Maybe I will.
Yeah. You could write it off. The whole trip off.
Interesting.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah.
I
Occasionally I have
like
good
the way you
ideas.
think. I like the way you
Yeah.
think, man. Well, okay. Well, is our work done here for today?
I think our work is done. I
Okay,
think our work is
good.
done.
Well, and
Yeah.
it's 6 o'clock your time, so enjoy your
Yep.
weekend, man.
Okay.
I'll talk to you later.
Okay. Thanks, brother. Bye.
That's it for today, but before we go, I just wanted to take a moment and say thank you to you, the listener, for spending time with us today getting set for sentencing. Whether you're a lawyer, someone who could use the help, or maybe you're just a true crime buff who loves the inside scoop on how this whole thing works. If you're interested in knowing more about what I do, mitigation videos, case consults, live teaching, on-demand educational content, books, articles, all of it, please visit www.dougpassonlaw.com. I'm Doug Passon. Until next time, hang in there. Wait a minute, that's a stupid way to sign off on a podcast about sentencing. Hang in there. What's the matter with you, man? I guess they call that gallows humor. Sorry. All right. Well, I will see you next time on Set for Sentencing. Bye-bye.